NBA's kind of, I don't know, flyby, if you will, was not to necessarily refer to it as urban, but maybe to refer to it as gangsta. And the thought was that urban might have a degree of street cred and you dress to express, but if it's gangsta, it might scare people away, ultimately might affect the business. And there were a number of you, if you remember, that said, hey, the business should have the right, especially when everybody's making all this kind of money, the business should have a right to be able to determine its dress code. Others of you said, wait a minute, their dress code is when they're playing on the court. I don't care what they fly in. I don't care how they travel to and from the game. I don't care how they're dressed in a post-game news conference. But bottom line is, when they get on the floor, they've got their tank top, they've got their shorts, they've got their sneakers, maybe they've got some sweatbands or whatever. But the bottom line is that's where their uniform is, all this other isn't. So this dress code was basically dealing with if they were handling any NBA business, travel, press conferences, interviews, the flights to the next city, the buses between the airport and the arena, they had to dress basically in a business casual way. The players, have they accepted it? Marcus Camby asked for a clothing allowance. I think the article said at the time he made $8 million a year, which really didn't score very many points. But they do accept it now because they began to realize the marketing opportunities, and some of them have a hell of a lot of fun with this dress code. So is it racist? Sure seems to be targeting one particular group. Is it legal? Well, as soon as people began to get paid because they were marketing clothes, they began to think it wasn't so bad. So it kind of got glossed over. But to your point, had they just simply said, this is what you need to wear, instead of saying all of these things and make sure you got a good knowledge of those things that got banned, that would have been a better dress code. Do y'all remember Regina Benjamin?
Yeah.
What was the deal with her?
Overweight.
Overweight, is that the best word?
She was the Surgeon General, which is supposed to be in charge of telling us how to be healthy, but she herself was obese.
Regina Benjamin was visibly, let me rephrase. Regina Benjamin was, according to government statistics, visibly obese. And obesity is the #1 health issue in the United States. So there were some people that said, if she's going to be the mouthpiece on health in the country, how can we have her speaking on obesity when, in fact, she is obese herself? Would you listen to somebody trying to give that message? Others said that she was perfectly qualified. Make sure that you're comfortable with her qualifications as you go through that article. And then this was the debate. Obama appointed her. We really didn't see her in public all that much. She was incredibly capable, and the debate was, is this discrimination to not have her in this role because of her appearance, because obesity is the #1 health issue, or is it good policy because people will tune her out because she is visibly obese and this is the #1 health issue? Barack went with her. She ended after the first term. There was one other thing that somebody suggested, even the article suggested, that would have made her very successful. Go ahead.
Didn't they say that she can also connect with the little girls who were dealing with that type of problem with their weight and stuff?
Yeah, and I think what you mean, the younger girls that would be dealing with maybe weight issues. And I think we had talked about this within the context of an addict would be oftentimes a very good drug counselor because they've been through the grind, so to speak. Well, the argument is if she is walking this walk, she can speak to it maybe with more empathy than anybody else. There was also an argument out there that said if she would have simply just lost the weight while she was Surgeon General, this would have been the best act to be able to follow because she is walking the walk, she is doing what she said. There was another form of discrimination that we brought up within the context of her. Do y'all remember what it was? It wasn't just about weight.
Because she's
Gender.
a woman,
Go ahead.
so we discriminate more easily women that they're overweight than men.
Yeah, we had suggested in here that there is at least some veiled sexism because you do not hear about men being overweight or too overweight for their job, but we do judge women by their appearance. And I think I had mentioned to y'all that Australian newscaster, The Man, who wore the exact same suit for 1 year and nobody said a word, but every day his female co-hosts got criticized based upon their hair, based upon their appearance, and yet somehow nobody noticed he wore the same suit, which basically means it is a complete double standard when you deal with people's appearance. I think I had even mentioned to you Hillary and Barack, and how Hillary, it took her 45 minutes extra each day to get ready. And if you had 45 extra minutes against your opponent in a razor-thin election, what could you do? What would that add up to over the course of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months? It added up to several weeks. Maybe he, in part, even if he was just sleeping a little bit later, had a big advantage against her then. Go ahead.
Was it also like another political, like, I forgot what it was, but like one of them was like overweight and they used it against him? Did that like tie into it?
It was. We mentioned the one example that people say of a man being in this was actually Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Chris Christie was that. Let me go to the Electoral College really quick. And what I did on this, to give you an idea, is when you go into video links, whichever class you're in, you'll see some study terms up here. And these study terms, do y'all remember the purpose of the Electoral College?
Wasn't it to prevent a populist vote?
You're really close. What do you mean prevent a populist vote?
It was to prevent a direct vote by the people because they were afraid that the people would vote wrong.
That's what it was. The purpose of the Electoral College, the electors in the Electoral College can actually overrule the popular vote. So the idea was that they would create this so that if the people picked the wrong candidate, the Electoral College could fix it. Trump is not president yet. Keep that thought in mind. Do you remember how they determined the Electoral College votes of a state? Go ahead.
Your electoral college votes is the sum total of representatives and senators you have.
The sum total of representatives and senators. And if you, the Democratic candidate, win the fine state of Maryland, then your 10 electors will go and vote in the Electoral College. So the Democrats pick electoral college voters, Republicans, the third-party candidates, and then the bottom line is that depending upon who wins the state, those voters actually get to go vote. So winning the states ultimately means that your voters pick, and if you picked your voters because they're loyal to you, then when they go vote, they're going to be loyal to you, although they're not legally bound to be.
So hold on, so the Electoral College is the House of Representatives and the Senators?
House of Representatives and Senators, it is the total number of House members and senators from a state. They're the ones that become the voters, but it is not the exact representatives and senators. Maryland has 8 House districts and 2 Senate seats, so it has 10 votes. And then if I'm a Democrat, I pick 10 loyal Democrats that are typically party people, and I mean Democratic Party people, and then they would go and they would vote Democrat. If I'm a Republican and I win, I'm going to pick my Republican Party loyalists, and then they're going to vote if I win the state that way.
Doesn't this also kind of force candidates to go to smaller states because they need those electoral votes versus if it was a popular vote system, they could just completely skip over places like Alaska?
Yeah, I think you could argue that, but I think what we had said, and maybe a better way of saying it, there's usually about 6 or 8 swing states in each election. You kind of know California is going to go liberal. You kind of know Texas is going to go conservative, for example, but you don't really know where Florida is going to go. Or in this election, you didn't really know where Pennsylvania was going to go. Or you weren't quite sure where North Carolina was going to go about the last, bless you, 3 presidential elections. So there's usually some of those swing states that are up there. But that's that. Date of the presidential election. When is it?
Tuesday.
The second Tuesday after the first Monday.
First Monday of the month. Or no?
No, it's the first Tuesday after.
Isn't it Wednesday?
No, it's the Tuesday.
Now it's Wednesday.
It's the first
No,
Tuesday
it's not like-
after the first
it's not
Monday of
case
that month.
specific.
The first Tuesday after the first Monday in November every 4 years.
See, I was.
So the earliest it can be November 2nd, and the latest that it will be, I guess, is November 8th. So keep that in mind. When is the date of the Electoral College vote?
I think it was like the first Monday after the second Wednesday.
The first Monday after the second Wednesday. I don't know how they came up with that. I think it had to do with travel, but that is when it becomes official. So Trump may have won, but they're going to refer to him as president-elect. He is not president until actually A, the Electoral College votes, and then of course B, he's got to get sworn
Wait, so
in.
again, so it's the first. Say that again. The
Yeah.
first one.
First Monday
Wait.
after the second Wednesday.
When does the previous president actually leave office?
First
He
Monday.
leaves office the day of the inauguration.
So that's after the actual vote? of
That's
the
actually, that would
college?
be in January.
So does that mean technically for a very brief window, we have two presidents?
No, it means that we still have that president-elect. It's just that it's been ratified that the election is real. And if something were to happen to the president-elect, then there would be no controversy that the vice president-elect would now rise up to be president. Because remember, you notice I've got up here, president-elect dies. If the president-elect dies before the Electoral College votes, who becomes president?
Like,
Oh,
hence,
God.
that's the best assassination insurance ever.
That's funny. Who becomes president? We don't know. Because if the president-elect dies before the Electoral College votes, you could make an argument that Hillary is the candidate now that's the living person that's got the most votes. You can make an argument about Mike Pence. You can make an argument that somebody that did not even run for the president can actually be voted into office. So this Electoral College vote this year, with all the protesting's going on, is kind of a bigger deal than maybe
Wait,
typical.
but what month for the electoral college?
December.
The first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. Yes, it's like December 16th, I think, or something this year. What happens if the Electoral College ties?
Then it goes to the House.
House of Representatives determines the president, and then the Senate would determine the vice president. And remember on this, when it goes to the House, each state gets one vote, and you need a majority. So Wyoming would have the exact same voice as California in the House determining the presidency. So keep that one in mind. And I think basically all of y'all, we did discuss the election of 1800, didn't we?
Oh, with the mixed match of
The mixed match.
Isn't that a,
one.
What happened in the election of 1800?
Wasn't it Jefferson who won president, and then someone won Republican,
no,
one
he's talking about-
Democrat?
he got into a duel.
Yeah.
He was.
What was the duel?
He
It
was
was Andrew
elected.
Johnson and Aaron Burr, and apparently, when Aaron
Wait,
Burr.
wait. Did you say Andrew Johnson and Aaron Burr?
I think so, it was.
Thomas Jefferson and Aaron
Aaron
Burr.
Burr.
Thomas Jefferson was running against John Adams. And back in the day, how did they determine the president and the vice president?
The popular
place would
vote
be
got
vice.
president, second place got vice.
Popular vote got president, second place got vice.
Mixed match.
Okay, so in 1796, you had Adams, a Federalist, as president, and Jefferson as a Democratic Republican as the vice, and all hell broke loose. Well, in 1800, they had a rematch, and it was Adams and Jefferson, and then Aaron Burr had agreed to be his vice president. And in this election, what happened in the Electoral College?
He got tied.
Nobody got a majority, and in fact, Burr and Jefferson tied. Adams was elected immediately, so at least you were going to have same party president, same party vice president. How did Jefferson get the presidency?
No.
Wait,
Wasn't that? How did Jefferson get the presidency? What about Hamilton?
He backed Jefferson.
Hamilton said, I really don't like Jefferson, but Aaron Burr would be the absolute ruin of this country. And it was the defeated Federalist Party that threw the election to Jefferson. Now, at that point, I had asked y'all a number of questions. One of them was, if you were Aaron Burr and you had agreed to be the vice president, would you go for the top job? Would you go for the presidency? And a lot of you, surprisingly, said, yes, I would. Well, when Aaron Burr got beat, he got mad and he challenged who to a duel?
Alexander Hamilton.
He challenged Hamilton because Hamilton screwed him in the House of Representatives. And what happened in the duel?
So I believe Hamilton shot up, and Aaron Burr had shot.
He,
Hamilton.
as a gentleman's sign, he went backwards, but when he turned around, he shot his gun in the air, and he thought that Burr wasn't going to shoot his gun, but instead Burr actually pulled out his gun, shot him, and killed him.
The custom was in a duel was that you needed to defend your honor, and of course, you're kind of standing sideways so that you're going to be thinner, basically. And Hamilton had won the first shot, so he shot straight up in the air. And custom was that if one person did this, then the other person would shoot straight up in the air, and the duel was over, and honor was preserved. Well, Aaron Burr was pretty pissed off, and when he gave himself up, Hamilton, Burr, at which point, shot him and gunned him down. He did die, kind of a drawn-out, painful death in this, and then Burr ran off into the Appalachian Mountains with a group of armed men to create his own country. Well, he murdered the vice president, the vice president was wanted for murder at this point, some would argue, and he was also wanted for treason. Ultimately, these charges were dropped, but what amendment changed it so now that the president and the vice president run together? What amendment is it?
26.
Not the 26th. This would have been around 1800.
Is it 9?
No, not the 9th. The first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights.
18.
The 18th Amendment, we're just yelling out numbers. The 12th Amendment is the one
I
that
was
changed it so that now, in fact, the president and the vice president are elected as one. 2 southern states. What was the deal with 2 southern states? Democratic candidate wins 2 southern states. Democratic candidate is going to be president. And if you look at the Electoral College map, Hillary won Virginia, didn't win a single other one. The election could have been over early had she won Florida or North Carolina. If the Democratic candidate wins 2 southern states, they're generally going to win the presidential election. What's the significance of Nebraska and Maine?
They split their electoral vote.
They do. They split their electoral college votes. If you win a state, typically it's winner take all. So it doesn't matter if you win 60 to 40 or 51 to 49. Maryland has 10 electoral college votes. You win the state, you get all 10 of those votes. In Maine and Nebraska, the person that gets the most votes in the state gets the 2 Senate seats. But each of the individual House districts, if you win the House districts, then in fact you get that 1 electoral college vote. And I believe Maine this time, for sure, Maine, Trump got 1 and I think Hillary got